When you hear someone describe a tea as having notes of honey, or orchids, fresh grass, stone fruit, roasted nuts, perhaps even seaweed or minerals, you may wonder how they can possibly taste all of that in a cup of tea. And maybe you've had this experience yourself. You take a sip, you think, it tastes like tea. The good news is that learning how to taste tea doesn't require a special talent. You don't need an extraordinary palate, and you certainly don't need to memorize an endless vocabulary of tasting notes. You simply need to pay attention. Welcome back to TeaMinded. I'm glad you're here. Today we're exploring how to taste tea more intentionally, and how paying attention to aroma, flavor, texture, and finish can completely change the way you experience a cup. The first thing to understand is that tasting tea is not a test. There is no correct answer. If one person tastes honey and another tastes dried fruit, neither person is necessarily wrong. Taste is influenced by memory, experience, culture, even the foods we've eaten throughout our lives. The goal isn't to identify the exact tasting note printed on a package. The goal is simply to notice. And the more you notice, the more interesting tea becomes. A good tea tasting actually begins before the water ever touches the leaves. Start with the dry tea. Look at it. What do you notice? Are the leaves long and twisted? Small and tightly rolled, bright green, dark and oxidized, whole and carefully shaped? The appearance of the leaves can tell you something about how the tea was made. But then comes one of the most revealing parts of tasting tea, the aroma. Smell the dry leaves. Don't worry about finding the perfect word. Simply ask yourself, what does this remind me of? Fresh grass, flowers, wood, fruit, chocolate, the ocean? There is no need to force an answer. Sometimes the first impression is enough. Then brew the tea. Once the leaves have been infused, smell them again. The aroma of wet tea leaves can be dramatically different from the aroma of the dry leaves. Heat and water release compounds that were previously hidden. Suddenly, a quiet tea may become intensely aromatic. This is one reason tea tasting can be so fascinating. The leaves continue to reveal themselves throughout the experience. Next, look at the tea itself. Tea professionals sometimes call the brewed tea the liquor. Notice the color. Is it pale, golden, amber, deep red, bright green? Is it clear, cloudy, vibrant? You don't need to judge the tea yet. Just observe it. Tea tasting begins with attention before it moves to evaluation. Now take a sip. And here's where many of us move too quickly. We swallow almost immediately. Instead, allow the tea to move across your mouth. Notice what happens. What is the first impression? Sweetness, bitterness, umami, roasted flavor, fruit, flowers, vegetal notes? Again, don't worry about finding sophisticated language. You may simply think, this reminds me of spring, or toast, or the ocean, or walking through a forest after rain. Those impressions are valuable. One of the most overlooked parts of tea tasting is texture, sometimes called mouthfeel. Tea doesn't simply have flavor, it has physical presence. Some teas feel light and delicate. Others feel thick, creamy, silky, dry, brisk, almost brothy. A Japanese gyokuro, for example, may feel rich and almost savory. A delicate white tea may feel soft and light. A strong black tea may leave a drying sensation across the mouth. That drying sensation is called astringency. And while astringency is sometimes confused with bitterness, they are not the same thing. Bitterness is a flavor. Astringency is a sensation. Learning to notice that difference is one of those small moments when your understanding of tea begins to deepen. Then there is the finish. What happens after you swallow? Does the flavor disappear immediately? Or does it linger? Does the tea leave behind sweetness? A cooling sensation? A floral aroma? A gentle dryness? Some of the most memorable teas continue to change even after the sip is over. The finish may last for several seconds, sometimes much longer. And that lingering quality is often part of what tea drinkers mean when they describe a tea as complex. Another way to deepen your tasting experience is to brew the same leaves more than once. Many high-quality loose-leaf teas are designed for multiple infusions. The first infusion may be light and aromatic. The second may become richer. The third may reveal something entirely unexpected. The tea hasn't changed, but what the water extracts from the leaves has. This is one of the pleasures of loose-leaf tea. A single tea can become a conversation that unfolds over time. If you want to practice tasting tea, try a simple experiment. Choose one tea you already enjoy, brew it carefully, then give yourself 10 quiet minutes. No phone, no television, no multitasking. Look at the dry leaves, smell them. Brew the tea, smell the wet leaves. Observe the color of the tea. Take a sip. Notice the flavor, the texture, the finish. You might even write down a few words. Not a formal review, just impressions. Sweet, grassy, warm, floral, comforting, bright. Over time, something interesting begins to happen. You develop a vocabulary, not because you've memorized one, but because you've learned to recognize your own experiences. You may begin to notice that one green tea reminds you of steamed vegetables, while another reminds you of fresh grass. One black tea may taste like malt, another like dried fruit. One oolong may feel creamy, another may be floral and light. The differences were always there. You simply learned how to notice them. And perhaps this is where tea tasting connects to something larger. At TeaMinded, we often talk about attention. Tea gives us an opportunity to practice it. We spend much of our lives moving quickly, eating while working, drinking coffee while driving, looking at one screen while another screen is playing in the background. Tea invites us to do something different, to stop, to taste, to notice. Learning to taste tea isn't really about becoming a professional. It's about becoming more present. You don't need the perfect vocabulary. You don't need expensive equipment. You don't need to impress anyone with tasting notes. You simply need curiosity. The next time you make tea, give it your full attention for just a few minutes. Notice the leaves, the aroma, the color, the flavor, the texture, the finish. You may discover that a cup you've enjoyed many times has been saying much more than you realized. You just needed to listen. As TeaMinded continues, we'll keep exploring tea culture, craftsmanship, tea rituals, mindfulness, and intentional living through the lens of tea. But today, I hope this episode encourages you to approach your next cup with a little more curiosity. Not to judge it, not to analyze it perfectly, just to notice. Thank you for listening to TeaMinded. If you enjoyed this episode, follow the podcast on Spotify and share it with someone who loves tea, flavor, craftsmanship, or simply learning to pay closer attention to everyday experiences. And until next time, brew carefully, taste with curiosity, and stay tea-minded.